as weird as this probably sounds, I find there's something kind of wholesome about this force of evil that is almost nigh unstoppable and actually I don't even know a word for it to be quite honest. It's this force of destruction that is coming to destroy you and everything you love and all that you hold dear. For some reason I find that kind of wholesome in a story, like when that's the thing you're fighting against. And it's been a while since I've had played a game or read a story with that. Well, not read a story, but more so played a game with in a store, played a story within a game. Sorry, where there is such a force as an enemy. That's probably one of the reasons why I kind of like when I look back on the Dragon Age series. That's probably why I like the idea of the Darkspawn and the Blight, especially in Origins. In two, they looked kind of ridiculous, and I can't remember if they did anything with them in Inquisition. Like this one's going off of memory, but yeah. And the Darkspawn, like when they were in Origins, they looked ferocious. I mean, in two they looked kind of ridiculous. In Origins, they looked ferocious. Same with in Awakening. They were this force of just wanton destruction, I guess, or just destruction. Pillage, plunder, no rape though, and well, actually not even plunder. It's just destruction. Burn everything to the ground and kill anything that moves or infect anything that moves. That was the Darkspawn and the Blight, basically. And I find it kind of wholesome when you have to fight a force like that, when you have to actually work where the end goal is ending that threat. And like the ferocity of the Darkspawn, the Blight was something that I really enjoyed about Origins. Actually, I just liked fighting them in general because they were something. They were something I don't see that a lot of anymore, at least in games. Then again, I might be looking in the wrong places. But yeah, the Darkspawn, like they have variety to them. They have their own, like they have their warriors, they have their mages, they have their rogues, they have all of that, and they all have them in different classes. Like an emissary is a mage, and I forget what the other variants are, but that's not what's important. The important part is there is this sense of dread with the Darkspawn that I love. It's kind of similar to how you should look at orcs. In fact, they remind me a lot of orcs, which I'll get into later. But yeah, it's just a very compelling thing in a story to fight an evil that is uncompromising, unrelenting, and without an ounce of sympathy whatsoever. And to start this off, a Blight and the Darkspawn, they're less potent without what is known as an archdemon. And well, to give some context, Darkspawn are usually underground, where the only people they are a threat to are dwarves, and the dwarves pretty much keep them at bay with the Legion of the Dead and some other dwarven armies that they have fighting them. But they mainly burrow underground. They stay there, and generally the only person that they're a threat to down there is the dwarves. Maybe if you go deep enough into the deep roads, I'm pretty sure anyway. However, when an archdemon is a factor and comes into the picture, they go above ground and they become a threat and start killing, like in mass numbers. And what an archdemon is like in the lore of Dragon Age, there was this event where there was this place called the Golden City, the Maker God's throne on Earth. There were these magistrates from a place called the Tevinter Imperium. They went into the Golden City using their magic, and just by touching it, they corrupted it. And all the gods they worshipped were corrupted as well somehow. These were known as the Old Gods. And each Old God became what is known as an Archdemon. And they were buried deep underground. I think. Again, all this is based on memory. So, yeah. And you only ever see one Archdemon, to my knowledge, in the game. in the series, and that is the one of the fifth Blight. His name starts with a U, and he has the form of a dragon. I don't know if the other archdemons look like dragons, but this one did. Pretty archetypical of a fantasy story to have you fight a dragon as the last boss. But the archdemon is malicious, evil. There is no reasoning with it, and it wants the destruction of everything and everyone in the world, or for everyone and everything to be corrupted and to bow towards them. And they lead the Blight. Like, that is all you need to know. Okay, while not technically a part of the Darkspawn completely, there are these people called the Tainted. Now, these are people, and yeah, these are people, humans, elves, dwarves, anyone who becomes infected by the Blight but doesn't die. So if the Blight doesn't kill you, become infected, you are turned into who is known as a ghoul, and you slowly begin to lose your mind. Your nails will fall off, your skin decays. Eventually you become a Darkspawn, basically. The only difference is you weren't born one naturally. Like, I think someone in the video made it sound like you only become a Darkspawn through infection. Actually, no, there's two ways. It's either you get infected and either I assume you become a Darkspawn yourself, or you die a very slow and agonizing death, or you become a Darkspawn. Personally, I can't decide which is worse. Because, like, from what I've seen of the people who become what is known as a ghoul, it is not a pleasant process, and there's no real confirmed timetable on it. So you have no idea how long you have, but it's probably best to off yourself before then, because it sounds like an awful process. And I would not wish it on my worst enemy. Well, actually, no, I would probably wish it on Arl Howe, but that's just me. Also, because I forgot to put this earlier, people who become infected and become ghouls, they begin to hear the call of the old gods and heed it. So, yeah, if you are infected, it might be good to have you put down because you will become a threat at some point. It's only a matter of time. Like, this even happens to wardens, Grey Wardens, who have the Blight in them, but it's not as. But at least they're serving a purpose, and it doesn't infect them the same way. So there is that. Just thought I would add that, or would include that, so I was covering my basis on this. Again, becoming infected with becoming the tainted and a ghoul is a very unpleasant. It is something I felt sorry for someone if this happened to them in real life. Like, thankfully this is just fiction, but if something like this happened to someone I knew, I would be heartbroken. And the worst part, I think, would be the fact that your mind starts to go, but again, that's just me. Brood mothers. Now, I mentioned earlier that some Darkspawn are, well, no, Darkspawn are usually born of something. Well, people who go into the deep roads that are women, or if you're a female and you've become a ghoul and you've gone into the deep roads and and your mind has become like the Darkspawns, some of them become what is known as a brood mother, and these things birth Darkspawn. Um, the exact process is unknown to me. It's been described as the woman being violated and becoming these things, and it's assumed they have a long lifespan. It's assumed they are sexually abused by the Darkspawn, and these things, they give birth to a lot and a lot and a lot of Darkspawn, and they are a pain in the ass. And you actually have to fight one at one point in Origins. It's pretty dark stuff, actually. One lady who became a brood mother, she was a dwarf. There was actually this book you found in the deep roads when you were looking for someone as to get one of the armies to fight the Darkspawn horde or the Blight. One book said that she devoured her own kin, and it was kind of rhymey the way the book made it sound. So everyone who was not turned into a brood mother was eaten, or killed and then eaten. Hard to say in what order. But yeah, these things birthed Darkspawn in droves, and it was a bitch to take one down. To be perfectly honest, and like I hear rape is a horrible thing to happen to someone at least to a woman. I imagine it's the same for a guy, but This takes it to a whole nother level. You not only are violated, you are turned into something that has to give birth to monsters. You're basically a Tiamat. I believe was the fictional, mythological female monster mother's name. Anyway, yeah, unpleasant all around. Like the lore of Dragon Age when it comes to the Darkspawn is actually pretty interesting. It's disturbing, but interesting. Harlocks. These things are Darkspawn born of human broodmothers. They are one of the few ones that are actually capable of crude speech. I think they're the only ones. Although later on we do meet Harlocks that are capable of this. I believe in Awakening. And yeah, it's messed up. Like these things are vicious. Like all Darkspawn, they are vicious. And there's something that I would not want to meet. Like just look at them. They are ugly abominations that personally I think need to be eradicated at all costs. Like after they're done, burn the bodies, the whole shebang. And that's all there is really to know about these. Like all Darkspawn, they are repulsive. There is no reasoning with them, and they gotta go. Genlock. These are Darkspawn born of dwarven broodmothers. They are actually supposed to be, I think, shorter than dwarves slightly, but yeah, they are still nonetheless vicious creatures. That again, I would not want to fight alone. I would like to have some people at my. Well, actually, no. Maybe you could fight a few of them on your own, but yeah, they are not pleasant. They are very they're like all the Darkspawn are disturbing to look at. This one especially, mainly because of the how demonic they are. Like, they all look like they're a demonic version of something from Thedas, and yeah, they're all repulsive to look at. And again, kill them with fire. Ogres. These things are born from Kunari broodmothers. They are like. I tend to think of them as being like the brutes from the Halo universe. Like they're big, they're hulky, they can do some damage and fuck you up if they get real close and you're a normal person. And they have a habit of actually killing people that are actually important to you in the plot. In Origins, one of them killed Kalen. Like it crushed him. Well, I don't mean like with its foot. I mean it had him in his hand and snapped him. Like just crushed a little bit more, and his spine, I guess, broke. And in Dragon Age 2, it kills either Bethany or Carver, depending on whether if you pick Hawk as a mage or a warrior or a rogue. And these things are a pain in the ass to deal with. Sort of. I like how in Origins you could actually have this like cool way of killing them where you would jump up, stab them, they would fall back, and then you would stab them in the head. I like that. But yeah, these things are like human, well, not human, but demonic battering rams. And as with the others, they are scary to look at. And again, I say kill them with fire and fuck them. They can go to hell. They can go to hell and die. And yeah, no, just fuck them. Like all, and the thing that really gets me about these things is they can probably do the most damage. Like Herlocks and Genlocks, and there's actually one on here I'm going to skip called the Shrieks, but mainly the first two. They can do damage on their own, like kill some people, but they're like human and dwarf size, so you can eventually take them out. An ogre is bigger, meaner, probably nastier, or at the very least is as nasty, or if not nastier, than the other Darkspawn, and they can kill a lot of people before you probably take them down. Just depends on like your skill set and how prepared you are. And again, well, actually not again, but yeah, I would not want to meet one of these things in the dark alley at night. Okay, so with most groups, you have kind of like a hierarchy, or at least you have those that are meaner and nastier than the normal grunts you run into, or ones who specialize in something more than any other. An emissary is just like a darkspawn that uses magic, so it's a darkspawn mage. An alpha, which you see in Genlocks and Herlocks, they are darkspawn that are a bit higher up. They command the lower darkspawn, and they are also nasty and a pain to deal with. So they're kind of like leaders, basically. And they're a little bit more of a challenge, depending on what your level is. And as with the others, they're not someone I would want to run to into a dark alley, but yeah, they are like another reason why the Darkspawn are so imposing for me is, well, not for me, but why I think I like them as an evil force idea is there's kind of like a hierarchy to their evil, because despite the fact they are technically mindless zombies, essentially, like they probably have thoughts on to do stuff, or at least they're given commands to do stuff by an archdemon during a blight. Without that, they're mindless, but their evil is at least directed towards something. And like they have other ones that are, you have little ones and you have bigger ones. Like, you know that saying from I think it was the Phantom Menace. There's always a bigger fish. Well, the alphas are kind of like that. They are higher up on the totem pole, and they kind of like lead groups of them. And I really have no idea what else to say about them other than that. So with the basic ones out of the way, I think I'll move on to some of the uniquer ones, which is there are the Magisters. Now, as I said, I believe it was when I was talking about the Archdemons. Before Darkspawn were a thing, in the Tevinter Imperium, there were these Magisters who were very powerful mages. I believe they were. And they entered what was known as the Golden City. After entering it, according to the Chantry, it was tainted by their touch. And they became what are known as the first Darkspawn. Now, there is some reason to suspect this, because this does come from the Chantry, who probably used this as propaganda to vilify mages. So there is some reason to treat it with suspect. However, we have met at least two people, well, at least one of them we know for sure was there and was one of the Magisters, and that was Corypheus. The other one who's suspected to have been a Magister was another guy I'll be talking about later, the Architect. The only difference is Corypheus has his memories intact. The Architect does not remember who he was before. He just assumes he's a Darkspawn. Corypheus was actually there. He actually, when he awakens in the DLC Legacy of Dragon Age 2, he looks up into the sky and calls out to his god Dumat. I believe that's what his name was, Dumat or Dumas. Now I'm going to say Dumat. Let's just go with that. Problem is, Dumat was the first. Well, I think he was from a previous Blight that we have never been involved in the games anyway. And I think a warden at the time even says this. Yeah, that was like the archdemon of the first Blight, or one of the Blights anyway. Again, all this is off of memory, so take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt. And please look all this up for yourself if you're interested, because I find the lore of the Darkspawn very fascinating. And these Magisters were thought to have been the first Darkspawn. And from them, all Darkspawn came from. I actually kind of wish they would do a story that kind of, well, not a full story, but kind of like maybe a very, very short story of lore that involves that to kind of elaborate some. Like have it be like there was this one gospel thing, I believe it was about Judas. You could do something like that. Like they did some of that already in Dragon Age lore with Andraste's mortal husband who betrayed her. So they could do something else where it talks like maybe it's lore that you don't actually know if it's reliable or not, but you could say it's a possibility. And the Magisters, they really fucked up and screwed over the world, to be perfectly honest, because of them, the Blights happened, because of them, the Grey Warrens happened, because of them, hundreds, no, probably millions or thousands upon millions of people, or the other way around, have died in each Blight, I think. And lots of people have had to become Grey Warrens as a result. Well, not had to. Some of them could have been like convicts who had to choose between this and prison or execution. But yeah, it's a fucked up thing. Although, it is interesting to point out that when Corypheus awoken, actually I think I might have said this already, but I'm going to say it again because I find it kind of funny. Corypheus said when he got to the city, it was already tainted. Which I find this funny because it's the equivalent of, yeah, you see all this the black city, the tainted city that the Maker once used as his throne, all the Darkspawn around here that came as a result. That wasn't my fault. It was already broken by the time I got here. Not my fault, guys. Totally not my fault. I'm totally innocent on this. Please believe me. Well, not exactly the please believe me part, but yeah, it's kind of like I didn't break that. It was broken by the time I got here. Yeah, and yeah, no, moving on. The Awakened. These are a group of Darkspawn who, like, again, this is something I'll be touching on later, but there's, again, the Architect was a Darkspawn who tried to do something after the Blight, or maybe it was during the fifth one. He found a way to actually cause Darkspawn to gain sentience of their own. Now, he did this by having them ingest the blood of Grey Wardens. Downside, the results have varied. And some of these became like the disciples. They are darkspawn, but have more human-esque sentience and personality. I mean, they still come off as malevolent to me, but that's just my perspective on it. But unlike them, there were also some cases like the one, I believe she's called the Mother. She's like a unique-looking brood mother, I would say, and she is insane. The disciples at least had some kind of sanity to them. If not, they seemed a little crazy or malicious. But yeah, they still seemed sane compared to this one called the Mother. She longed to hear the song of the old gods again, the archdemons. She wanted it to come back. And she was insane. Again, crazy. So the Awakened, it sounds like a good thing, but at the same time, the results have varied and differed. And I still would not trust the disciples that the Architect freed from the Blight infection. I still don't trust them. Like, I would not trust them as far as I could throw them. Or at the very least, I would keep my eye on them if I was in their company. Like, they did not seem like the type I would invite for tea and bread or brunch. But they are an interesting concept. Now, this kind of detracts a little bit from me saying that I like the Darkspawn, the Blight, as this force of evil. I would argue the Awakened still are a kind of evil. They just want their people to have sentience. And they still could be malicious, even if they got all the Darkspawn to have sentience of their own. They all might collectively still be malicious and vindictive and evil. They could. You don't know. It would, like, that's never been made into reality yet. I would like to see that, though. It would be pretty cool. And, like I say, they're malicious a little because, well, to give you an idea, during Awakening, the Architect sent one known as the Messenger to warn the Grey Wardens. His interpretation of the order was, well, let's just say not that great. But he does make he did make some interesting comments while I was there, like, you think you understand us? Well, that is understandable. So it has some kind of reasoning to it, or they do. And again, I would rather be around them than the one that was called the Mother, I think is what she was called. Because at least there was a modicum of sanity to their malice. The Mother was just insanity married to malice and want for destruction and murder. Or at the very least, a willingness to cause mass murder. But then again, that's again left up to my perspective. If you've played the game and you have a different perspective, feel free to correct me on this. Now, the Darkspawn, they aren't just a threat because of, like, they're not a bunch of regular bands of monsters that go roaming around. They are all collected into a horde. A very large horde of Darkspawn, and they are vicious. They destroy entire cities if they can. At one point, they nearly took Denerim, the capital of Ferelden, and it was only because the hero of Ferelden had amassed 3 armies together that they managed to fight it back and kill the Archdemon and the Blight. And yeah, these things destroy towns, cities, anything that's not part of the Blight, they will kill, and they're mindless. Like, actually, that's the worst kind of evil to fight is the mindless evil that can outnumber you because there is no reasoning with it. There is no. There's no. You can expect no compassion, no mercy. You will be destroyed, murdered. Your children, your wife, your siblings, your husband, everyone you know, and everything you care about. These things will tear apart just because it's their nature, and there is a lot of them. And there's variety. They come in big and small, is the best way I could describe it. And you do not want to be alone against these things because they will rip you to pieces. They did that at the Battle of Ostagar. Actually, they tore the mostly because Loghain betrayed the king and left him to die. But anyway, the Horde started at Ostagar at a battle, moved up, took Lothering, destroyed it, killed a lot of people. In fact, that's why the events of Dragon Age 2 happened, was because the protagonist lived in Lothering and he fled it as it was being destroyed. And then they moved on to Denerim, and these things, like some of them have stragglers that you'll run into from time to time, but they generally congregate together on this big mass of malicious malevolence and destruction, is basically how I could describe the Horde. Think think those zombies from the like. Imagine a large horde of zombies all together. Imagine the amount of people they can kill and the damage they can do. You take down one or two, they keep on going. They don't care you've killed one of their friends; they'll keep on going. Or associates. I don't think they have consider each other friends. They're more like, oh, this is another someone I kill people with. That's probably how they look at each other. But yeah, the numbers of the Darkspawn are. It seems almost like there's an infinite number of them. Like, I don't think you can actually get rid of them. There's so many of them. Like, they've probably added to their numbers so much over the centuries they've been around that you'd probably need all of Thedas to go into the deep roads to massacre a lot of them. And they, as I said before, they come in big and small. Like, you've got ogres, for God's sake. You have emissaries who use magic. You've got basic warriors, dwarves, elves, and they are all part of a hive mind. So if you, I think if one of them knows where you are, all the Darkspawn technically will know where you are, and they can come after you. And yeah, their numbers are definitely an advantage on their part. Like you need a very large, skilled army. In fact, the only people dedicated to it, taking care of them are the Grey Warrens, and there aren't that many Grey Warrens as far as I know. At least in Ferelden, like they are rebuilding. There's probably more Grey Warrens in the world as a whole, but I think Grey Warrens should really get all of Thedas together to go into the Deep Roads to massacre the Darkspawn, and then they would probably have less to worry about. But that'd be just me. I mean, still a Darkspawn will probably, or not a Darkspawn, an Archdemon will probably come about. Still, in the few Darkspawn that haven't been massacred, they'll flock to it, and who knows? They may just kidnap people and make them a Darkspawn. Hard to say. And yeah, the their numbers are definitely a factor. There's a sense of almost futility in fighting them. Like you're gonna die. The only difference is if you fight them, you'll die tired. It's like that Boba Fett, well, supposedly a Boba Fett quote. You can run, but you'll just die tired. That's the feeling I often get from the Darkspawn. Is that, yeah, no. There's a sense of just inevitability and futility in fighting them. And again, there is a shitload of them. And also, again, they come in variety. They come big, small, medium, large pack. There's probably a burger option for all I know. As I mentioned before, the Darkspawn are ruthless. They have no sympathy, no empathy, no conscience, no compassion. You are fighting malice, well, mindless malice at its worst. Like at one point, when the hero Ferelden brought the armies to Denerim to reclaim the city from them and kill the Archdemon, one Archdemon had a soldier with a blade to his throat, ready to cut it open. he saw the approaching army. Its eyes narrowed. It looked either focused, annoyed, or well, that could be it. And then he slit this guy's throat without even looking at him. Like he did not give two fucks about anything. It was just, oh, more people to kill. That was the Darkspawn in a nutshell. They are ruthless, they are relentless, and when they have an archdemon, they are a very decisive threat. And I would not want to be in front of even one of these guys. It's kind of like the goblins in Goblin Slayer. They are like there is no sympathy, there is no reason. There's just it's either kill or be killed. Pretty simple choice. Now, aside from the Awakened or the Disciples or the Mother or the Architect, there's a lack of speech or human reason among the Darkspawn. Like, they make noise with their mouths, but that's about it. And I could swear I heard it's mainly the Hurlocks who do this. Um, like, some of the information I'm using is both from. I am using some sources from, one YouTube video, and I'm also looking up some more stuff just for stuff, but this is mainly going off of memory here. The Darkspawn show a lack of speech or human reason. The Hurlock, and I think the Genlocks and the Ogres to some extent do make noise with their mouths, but it's usually like roaring. They're more animalistic. It's not till they've been freed from like the calling of the Archdemon or the Blight or the Hive Mind or whatever it is that affects them mentally, because Darkspawn have no real reasoning. They are. I would say it's like they almost act on instinct, but I could be wrong there. But there does seem to be this killer instinct within them. Like, think sociopaths and psychopaths, but more savage. And I don't know if I've said this beforehand, but I could swear I've said it somewhere in the video. You cannot reason with the Darkspawn. They are unreasonable. They will burn and destroy everything that crosses their path until all the world is either like them or destroyed, ravaged, pillaged, plundered, and reduced to, well, ruins. Well, actually, no, ruins actually look nice. They render everything else to something of a worse state. But that is the gist of, like, yeah, you cannot reason with them. You cannot talk it out with them. There is no talking with them. Like, the disciples, maybe you could talk to, but that's a big maybe. Like a really big one and a big leap of faith you'd have to be taken. So, bear that in mind. This is why I also think they make a good force of an evil force to fight against, because like some that I'll be mentioning later, they have no. They're almost soulless in a way. Like I've said this before, but yeah, it's like there's not a human reasoning upstairs. It's just destruction, evil, malice, malevolence. Like they're like orcs, and the archdemon is like Sauron, basically. The only difference is orcs have some reasoning to their malice. Well, not reasoning. They're just malicious dickheads, but they're at least capable of speech and articulating their malice. Darkspawn are not. They just roar at you all day and slit your throats, destroy your home, your life, your family, and not in the infidelity kind of way. Anyway, I'm getting off topic and kind of just stalling for this, but anyway. Now, this is one I've been mentioning previously, but I'm now getting to. The Architect is probably the most unique kind of Darkspawn. He is supposed to be an emissary, or some kind of emissary, but he is unique in a way that he creates what's known as the Disciples, and he also technically created what's known as the Mother by feeding them Grey Warden blood, and this gave them some kind of sentience. Some of them went crazy, some of them were middle of the road and was leaning more towards crazy or just doing damage. And also, he's unique in that it's speculated he may have been one of the Magistered who entered the Golden City. So he could have been there with Corypheus, for all we know. Another interesting thing is, and spoiler alert if you haven't played the game yet, in which case, why haven't you? He technically caused the fifth Blight to happen because somehow he caused the Archdemon to awaken earlier than it was supposed to, and so a lot of the people who died in the fifth Blight and in Origins, you can technically blame on him. Not all of them. Like the death of the Kuslins was more or less Arl Howe's doing all the while, or all around. The Blight just offered an opportunity for him to do it. And he was probably going to do it eventually. It just the opportunity presented itself to him, so he took it. Like he seized the day, as I think it was Robin Williams that one movie, which is a quote I kind of find annoying. And other stuff like, the Circle Revolt with mages practicing blood magic. That happened actually because a mage who was at Ostagar came back, and I think he was a little twisted. Well, he might have been twisted before that. But many of the deaths caused by the Blight and Loghain's schemes and leaving the king to die, you can kind of blame some of that on the architect because he did cause the Blight and a lot of deaths. And similar to how Loghain used the Blight as an excuse to get rid of Kaelin, or that's the theory I'm going with anyway. And yeah, he's kind of a detriment again to my argument of why I think the Blight is such a good evil force. He is of an evil force, and he may actually be partially responsible for the creation of this evil force, but he no longer remembers that part of his life. He just assumes he's a Darkspawn that is unique and has sentience. But unlike most Darkspawn, he actually seems to be trying to rectify stuff, and if he is a Magister left over from the Tevinter Imperium that invaded the Golden City, he seems to be at least trying to rectify his mistake, albeit unknowingly. So yeah, he is interesting in that respect. Um, yeah, no, he's just an all-around interesting character, and probably my favorite part about the Darkspawn, despite how much he contradicts to the argument I want to make here. And you have an option to work with him in an awakening, to work towards a goal that benefits both the Grey Wardens and him. Now, this is something I wanted to touch on earlier, is if I could compare the Darkspawn and the Blight, but more so the Darkspawn to anything in general, it would definitely be the orcs from Lord of the Rings, the goblins from Goblin Slayer, and the zombies from The Walking Dead. They are mindless, conscienceless, or they have no conscience, they have no empathy, there's no reasoning with them, it's just you have to destroy them. This is more or less the case with all of them except for the architect, to a degree, and the disciples. Beyond that, these things are killing machines. I'd say this of goblins from Goblin Slayer mostly because the goblins, they kill people or they rape people, but they only do that to women that they capture. They more or less prefer to kill people. Some women they'll rape and kill. So the Darkspawn also technically do this without the rape part. And similar to the orcs, they are ruthless. They are very ruthless. Like I remember when I was a kid, well not a kid, but this was before middle school. I saw one of the Lord of the Rings trilogy movies on DVD, and it was the only one I saw until recently. One of them was hungry, so an orc suggested they cut off the feet of the hobbits to eat because they won't be needing them. The orc leader cuts off that one's head and says they can eat that body now. And then the orcs proceed to cannibalize their former ally or associate. The Darkspawn, you can argue, would probably do the same thing. They have a similar malicious evil to them. Like they are malice incarnate, but without the intention of being so. That's just how they are. They are a species of killing machines. And this is not a type of monster that you can reason with. This is not a looking for sympathy monster. This is, in a couple of seconds, I'm going to be eating your face off kind of monster. And you're fucked if you fight these things alone. So you better have an army at your back before you ever go near one of these things. Takeaways. Well, one thing I do think it's important to have the force of evil feel almost kind of unstoppable, very daunting, like a very tough obstacle for the protagonist to overcome, and something they have to like really work at to defeat. Antagonistic forces do not need to be sympathetic or humanized. Like, I am kind of getting tired of people making bad guys antagonists and villains who are just, oh, they're just misunderstood, or oh, they have their own problems. Like, sometimes no, sometimes an antagonist or a villain is just evil. Like, sometimes you can do that and it's fine. I mean, the critics may not like it, but you know what? I say fuck the critics. Fuck them. Like, if it benefits the story, I say go for it. And if it's in a fantasy setting, yeah, you can say, yeah, there is no human reason. These things are just being controlled by an evil force that needs to be contended with. Another thing would be make the lore behind the evil force disturbing if it benefits the story in some way, or it builds up said evil force. So if it helps to sell on what a threat and how monstrous this evil force is, I would make the lore as disturbing as physically possible. Because the Darkspawn, their lore is disturbing. Like how the brood mothers are hinted at to be made and suggested to be made, and the stuff that has been confirmed on how they're made is disturbing, and I kind of like it because it kind of just sells why I should despise these things. Like they are not only wanting to destroy everything in Thetis, but they are willing to commit one of the lowest acts a human being can probably commit, which is possibly rape, and make them do things that and make the people they are turning to broodmothers do awful things to people they knew, such as eating their own kin, or just anything you can think of. Like there are lots of disturbing ways to construct the lore for a very evil force. Give variety to the evil force, such as factions, groups, and sects. Now, as I mentioned, there are groupings within the Darkspawn. Let's see, well, you have the Origin, the Magisters, you have the Emissaries and Alphas, the Ogres, the Genlocks and the Hurlocks, the Broodmothers, the Ghouls. I suppose I should have just said types, like give different types of things within the evil force. So, like even within, like say the orcs from I'm sorry, I keep wanting to say Game of Thrones. I mean in Lord of the Rings. Sorry, like the orcs are all orcs, but you still have stuff like the Urukai and the Uruk. You have smaller and bigger ones, all of whom can fuck you up. If you're playing Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War, they can all fuck you up in some way. I would say the same thing of the Darkspawn, because some are bigger than others, and they've gotten redesigns after Origins, unfortunately. So some of them are bigger and some are smaller. So have some diversity of variety is all I'm saying. Like, yeah, and yeah, just build up this antagonistic force that should be taken on, is all I'm saying. And it doesn't have to be a gray issue. It can be a black and white morality thing. Like there can be other things in your story that are gray or have shades to it, but it doesn't always have to be that way with the villainous force. And with that out of the way, I think I will call it on this video. Um, Shout out to, I think it's Gil Thalen. I will be posting a link to her video. Some of the information I got for this video came from hers. And if you haven't already, I would check out the video and subscribe if you like it. And yeah, that's it. Have a nice day. I hope this gives you an excuse to at least check out Dragon Age Origins if you've never played it before. It's a fun role-playing fantasy game, or at the very least, it's a fun fantasy game. I'm actually one. This has actually made me want to go back and get it up for the Xbox One and play it again because I missed that game. Downside, I'll want to buy all the fucking DLCs. But anyway, yeah. Goodbye, and remember the game was rigged from the start.